couldn't hear that song, but I can only imagine it was just like the best intro song ever. Oh, like not the funky music though.
No, never the funk. Well, I mean, it is the perfect occasion for some funky music.
It is a joyous occasion here at DNVR HQ. Of course, two people that you've probably seen on these shows before, myself and Henry Chisholm. Good to have you, Henry. But not as good as it is to have the homie Jake Schwanitz here. He's going to be taking over the DNVR Buffs lead, and we're super, super stoked to have him. So, Jake, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty well, man. Super, super excited to be here. Thank you for the horns and all the jazz music. I appreciate it.
Oh, my God. We lost all our viewers.
Yeah, we got to turn that down.
That is really loud. You could probably hear it like through the board and then also through our microphone.
You guys probably didn't even need to listen on your computer. You probably heard that at home.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, how are you doing, man?
Doing well. Excited to be here. I'm ready to cover the Buffs, ready to get into some football. I mean, I think we're all ready for some football, right? It's been a long offseason. So
it's been a long 3 days, too. This preseason schedule, but that's not the point of this.
Oh, there you go. I guess before we jump too much into the Buffs, just want to kind of give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to Buffs Nation here. Obviously, we'll be around. We'll be doing lots of content together. But you're in charge of the beat. You're their guy. So introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Name is Jake Schwanitz. I've worked in football analytics at Sports Info Solutions. More importantly, I've been a DNVR fan for 5-6 years. First met Ryan and Andre around 2018 at the Senior Bowl. Became an intern, was on the DNVR Draft Podcast for a while. I've worked with Hank and Justin on DNVR Buffs and Rams stuff also.
Oh, so, don't bring up the Rams.
Sorry, don't say the R word.
I mean, on Henry's first podcast, he was like, yeah, I kind of grew up a CSU fan. Like, my dad went there. I was like, bro, don't say that. That was not a good intro.
I know. Oh, well.
Sorry, forgive me.
Bleed gold now. Got rid of drained it all out.
There you go.
Green blood. Yeah. That's what you're supposed to do with the green blood. Yeah.
And Jake, you're kind of like, at least when I first met you, I was like, oh, this is like a true football guy. Like you're very into the game. I think on a different level than I think the casual fan. And to me, that's what I'm most excited about your coverage is like you see the game through a very different lens. I don't know. You can kind of probably provide more color on that.
Well, I've been a lifelong football fan. I fell in love with the game at a very young age. Watching Terrell Davis and John Elway win Super Bowls, some of my very first football memories. Really just been obsessed since. Playing in the backyard, playing organized.
What position?
Wide receiver.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not too tall.
No. I got hands for days, though, bro.
Okay.
I was a tight end, so,
There you go.
And Hank's kind of a quarterback.
We can start a 7-on-7 team, boys.
Yeah, not a good one.
I mean, I say that just because I've seen you throw a football and you can throw it far.
My arm is underrated. People don't expect big things from me, but yeah. I mean, tailgates this year. Get a couple beers in me. See if I can unleash a couple long balls.
Breaking news, we now have a third player added to the Buffs quarterback controversy.
Yeah, I thought Owen McCown is in there now.
Possibly.
I think he should be.
Are you bigger or smaller than Owen McCown?
Bigger. Definitely bigger. That's one of those things where it's like there's like small for an adult human. There's like small for an 18, 19-year-old. He'll get here. He'll get here.
There we go. You can eventually graduate just being a small human.
Yeah.
Speaking of quarterbacks, I think that's where we start this. We're going to try to give you guys a nice primer heading into the season with this show. Even I, a huge diehard Buffs fan, needed a little bit of a refresher coming into this show just because there's been so much change in the program. So that's going to be kind of the goal of this show. But it all starts with the quarterback competition. And the interesting thing about this quarterback competition is it's like we're just now pressing play on a quarterback competition that we pressed pause on about a year ago. And what's interesting about this is that back then it sounded like JT Shrout was in the lead. But everyone was saying, hey, it's like 50-50, really close. JT's a little bit in the lead. And we'll talk about this a little bit more. But it feels like we're almost picking up right there with this quarterback competition. Jake, you wrote a film room on it. Check it out over at thednvr.com, kind of his debut piece diving into the film of these two guys, and I really enjoyed it. But what did you learn watching these two?
Well, honestly, the story of this quarter battle is just inconsistency on both sides. You saw it a lot last year. Brendan Lewis, one of the most inefficient offenses in college football, but also a freshman. I mean, that had to be understood. This guy was kind of thrown into a role.
Very much so.
And to his credit, didn't turn the ball over very much, but that also came with the inefficient offense, not very explosive, a lot of 3-and-outs. On the JT Shrout side, though, this is a guy that has arm talent. You put on the film from 2020, and it is kind of late in some of these games that he gets in there, but he's still willing to take risks with the football. A lot of those defenses kind of gave him the easy stuff underneath, but he still took the risks going downfield and made some really impressive throws. He's got some arm talent, and this is, of course, before the knee injury last year, but he did actually show some mobility, ability to roll around and kind of maneuver through the pocket. So we'll see if that still is kind of true to his game, recovering from that knee injury. But, yeah, it's just a story of inconsistent quarterbacks. Who can really emerge from this?
It's interesting that you mentioned kind of the short stuff because he was good in those areas and decisive. And I think you mentioned taking risks with the ball and decisiveness, and that was what was missing from Brendan Lewis last year. Like, you look back, you're like, wow, he only threw 3 interceptions. And it's like, I was sitting there like, please throw an interception. Like, just throw the ball. Like, and that was the big thing is like being so safe with the ball, not making those decisive early passes. You mentioned it in your film room, like he misses a drag that's just right there, and then all of a sudden he's scrambling and he just throws it into the dirt. That's what you can't have. And I think with the new offensive coordinator, Sanford, it's like his offense, he even said, I think, like, don't expect like big, flashy firework plays. Like, we're trying to move the ball down the field. That's why, to me, I'm looking at this and saying, like, man, it feels like stylistically Shrout is going to be a better fit for what he wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, with Brendan, you hope that he at least kind of gets pushed stylistically by JT, where who knows, maybe there's a world in which they rotate or something goes wrong and the other one gets in. You would think that if you're Brendan and you see JT kind of flinging the ball around, maybe being a little loose with the ball, but in an effort to make big plays, some of that rubs off. And you start realizing, like, okay, yeah, you can't be a college quarterback if you're not going to throw the ball more than 10 yards downfield. Or when you do, you put it right up next to the sideline, so there's really no chance you can catch it. Like, at some point, your job isn't just to give the ball back without, turning it over. It's not about field position. It's about going out there and scoring points. And we know that JT is willing to do that.
Absolutely. You did a little bit of research on Sanford. What do you think?
This is a guy that comes from a pretty diverse background in terms of the players that he coached. Coach Jordan Love at Utah State, Mike White at Western Kentucky, Ian Book, and a couple of other guys at Notre Dame when he was there. So he's shown the pedigree and been able to develop quarterbacks into at least all-American caliber quarterbacks. I don't know about NFL yet. We'll see with Jordan Love. But this is a guy that has, I would say, leans towards a pro-style system. It's going to be multiple. You're going to see a lot more movement, I believe, a lot more unpredictability than you did last year, which I think all Buffs fans are kind of hoping for.
It is tough to say.
Who was that quarterback at Minnesota last year?
Tanner Morgan.
Yeah. Even he, like, you take a guy who's not necessarily heralded and turn him into, I mean, he was more than passable against CU, but
totally.
In most of those games, you saw a competent quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I mean, the other thing with Sanford is he's just been in so many different systems where picking out what exactly he's going to do is tough to do because, like, you go to Stanford. That's a pretty pure pro-style attack. Last at Minnesota, they want to put extra offensive linemen out there. They want to be using tight ends. They want to be using motion with those guys. They just want to be pounding the rock up the middle. They want big guys who can run power runs. You look at Utah State, and that's a spread offense. And in all those places, it feels like he's kind of been pushed to fit the head coach's system. And he hasn't really had a chance to just run his own offense. And, that's somebody who used to be one of the up-and-coming offensive coordinators. You don't get to Notre Dame or Stanford as a very young coach. I think he's, 40 now?
He's around there.
So something like that. But if you're a young coach, to get one of those jobs, you've got to be showing something. And I do think that there's a real chance that this is kind of his opportunity to take the leash off and run what he wants to run. Now, does he have the tools to run what he wants to run? Who knows?
Yeah.
The one thing I will say is what I've heard in the last 2 days at camp, it seems like this offense is going to be about smash mouth football. I've talked to a couple offensive linemen. We talked to Coach Hagan today. that the emphasis on the running game is strong with this team. At least that's the vibes I get so far. Of course, Alex Fontenot being the returning running back. Of course, Jarrett's gone now, but with Deion Smith and Alex Fontenot, I think you got a good pairing there.
Yeah, totally. And it's tough because I know Ryan disagrees with this, but if Colorado's going to win, it's going to be through power football by being big and strong and running the football. And he wants the spread. He loves the spread. But you look back at who actually wins the Pac-12. It's all the power teams. Like, it's Utah. It's Oregon. It's never USC. It's Washington back in the day, Stanford back in the day. It's whoever can just grind through every single one of these speed teams. And I don't know, you just got to pick something and do it at this point because you're kind of starting from nothing.
Well, and I think you make a good point there. To me, that's more about going against the grain.
Exactly.
And so what happens is, Oregon sets the Pac-12 into this like crazy spread world where it's just like it's an arms race to get as fast and as multiple as you can in the passing game, and you're not even running the ball, you're just throwing short passes, and like that sent the Pac-12 into a whole new era. So then everyone got so much smaller, right?
Yep.
On defense, you're just bringing in these tiny linebackers who should be safeties. And, you're getting so light on the defensive line because everyone's going, hurry up. And then all of a sudden Utah comes in, and they're just like, yeah, we're not really about that. We're just going to go power. And then no one has the personnel to stop that. It's like... at this point, it's like, why not you just go triple option again? Like,
yeah,
it works for those teams. Air Force is probably going to win the Mountain West this year. Why? Because they run that, they run it well, they run it better than everyone else, and you're not prepared for it when you see it. So I think there is a case to be made there. The problem with that is you really, really have to hit in the trenches if you're going to go down that road, and you really have to hit an offensive lineman. Now, you make the case that's the most rich crop of recruits you have in Colorado usually comes from the offensive line, but I think one of the reasons I'm so against it is because that's what John Embry wanted to do when he came here. And what happened was you had this pro style offense that was terrible, and you go back, what have we been complaining about with the Broncos for the last few years? Bad and boring.
Yep.
Like, bad and boring is the worst thing you can be. At least I would love to lose games 45-40. You know what I mean? Like, at least that's fun and electric, and your guys are scoring touchdowns, they're making big plays, and the ball's moving around. When you fail at trying to go pro style in college, you fail hard, and it is ugly.
Yep.
Yeah, that was evidenced last year with the Buffs, I think. Going back to the quarterback competition, though, I mean, both of them have such a unique skill set that I think the offense could look very different depending on who is under center. I mean, if it's Brendan Lewis, it wouldn't surprise me to see a lot more option-type stuff. Not quite
RPO,
triple option.
yeah.
Exactly. Read option type stuff, really trying to get him out on the move, easy throws. With JT, I think you can really balance the offense out with heavy run game, play action, and downfield passing with his skill set.
And one thing that I think wasn't talked about enough last year when it comes to Brendan Lewis is they had to put the shackles on Brendan Lewis because once JT Shrout went down, they had literally no quarterback depth behind him. So what does Brendan Lewis do better than anything else? He moves. Now, they were afraid to move him around and let him run because if he got hurt, you were starting true freshman Drew Carter, who was not ready to go by any stretch of the mind. We even saw him get in there a couple times, and that was evident. And they were scared. And so even if, just from that standpoint, if Brendan Lewis wins the job, you're going to see them be free and open with him. Like the last time the Buffs were great was with Sefo Lufau. The best play they had the whole season was quarterback power. I mean, every short yardage down, they ran quarterback power. You saw Oregon State do that last year to Colorado with the, what's his name?
Not
Jevia.
No, Chance Nolan was the starter. Was he the guy that used for that? It might have been.
Either way, you can, you get a big advantage with numbers when you're running your quarterback, and you could totally see Brendan Lewis bringing that to the offense. At the same time, maybe I've just fallen in love too much with arm talent with the way that the NFL has gone, and you just look around at who succeed. These young quarterbacks. It's Mahomes. It's Allen. It's Justin Herbert. Like all these young quarterbacks with huge arms. It makes offense so easy when your quarterback can make throws to all sides of the field at any moment. And obviously, JT Stroud's arm is not in that conversation. But even just watching the clips that you put in the film room, it's like okay, it pops off his hand at a lot different rate than
yeah.
it comes off of Brendan Lewis.
For sure. And I think that's going to be one of the major changes if JT Shrout is the starting quarterback. I think you're going to see a lot more downfield stuff, a lot more play action. With Brendan Lewis, too, you mentioned the mobility and kind of that aspect of his game. And I find it funny, honestly, because he had 98 carries on 188 yards last year. That doesn't exactly scream mobile quarterback, but as you mentioned with the depth issue.
Was, one or two design runs a game, maybe?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that was really disappointing. Well, and the other thing is when he got outside the pocket, nothing really happened. Like there were very few plays where he was able to roll out and evade pressure and then find somebody. It was basically every time he just throws the ball away.
Yeah.
Which was a real shame.
But, I mean, even like again, referencing clips from the film room, the 3rd and 15 touchdown against Oregon State. Was that in overtime?
That was right before.
To force overtime or to, in that game. That's him dodging someone in the backfield, stepping up in the pocket, ripping one. And it's like you can see that stuff. It's such an advantage, especially in college, to be mobile.
Totally.
And you just hope that a guy like Sanford, who has developed quarterbacks, he has a record of doing that, that maybe, it is the best thing for the Buffs for Brendan Lewis to be the starter this year, develop underneath him. Mm-hmm. And it's not like he has a weak arm or anything like that. But if he were able to just put it together, the ceiling feels higher.
Sure. I mean, I think that makes sense. This was a freshman quarterback last year. You'd hope that he's just better because he has another year under his belt. But he's just a young person overall. I mean, this is a guy that can keep on growing. And with Mike Sanford there, I think that's a mind that you can kind of use your quarterback and really kind of develop an offense for your quarterback as opposed to having an offense and forcing a quarterback like a square peg into the round hole there.
And the other thing that we were hearing this spring, there were a lot of really good things we were hearing about the coaching staff, and we'll talk more about the staff later. But one of the biggest ones that stood out the most was the quarterbacks talking to reporters back when I was there saying, well, yeah, now they tell us where to go with the ball. Now they say, like, if you see this, throw the ball here. And there's so many of those sorts of things that you hear, and you're just like,
a lot of stories like that coming out.
That wasn't happening before. And so it's really easy to see how anybody could improve in that situation, especially somebody who, that passing attack, it was 5th worst in the country behind the New Mexico Lobos. Terrible.
Jake's alma mater.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, but terrible.
It's all right.
And
we know.
Navy, Army, and Air Force, the 3 triple option teams. And so, you assume just some positive regression. Like, you have to be bad and unlucky. And again, it was 95% bad last year and not unlucky. But you expect that to get a little bit better by itself, and you just bring in a coach who has been around. Either one of these quarterbacks should be much better than they were last year.
I completely agree. All right, let's tie a bow on this. Who's it going to be? Henry, I'll start with you.
I think it's JT. I think Brendan will be better this year. How could he not be better? Like, that's just the nature of college sports is if you're 18 or 19 or whatever he was last year, that's a big gap from that year to the next. Still, though, there were so many missed throws. He was too conservative. He even on some of the shorter passes, he was pretty inaccurate.
Yep.
But it's not like any of this is breaking news. Like, you can see the numbers for yourself. I do think that just having JT Shrout come in, even just for the sake of change, would be good. But I also think he has some real traits that you can build around.
Well, look, the thing with JT Shrout, I mean, you mentioned Brendan Lewis has another year under his belt. So does JT because of the injury. Mm-hmm. So he had another offseason, or a whole season, really, to kind of...
Just mental reps.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Sit back, kind of watch the game from a different perspective. For that reason, I'm going to go with JT. I think he's got the best tool set for this team to win. I think that, with Brendan Lewis and the legs, I get why you would maybe want to hope that he wins the job because you could be even more powerful on the ground. But I think JT really gives this offense a different dimension.
Yeah, and I talked to people up in Boulder today just trying to get someone to commit to one side of this.
Yeah.
And I'll say, on the whole, it was a lot of it's 50-50. It's really close. But if I had to choose, I'd choose JT, which tells me it's not 50-50 if that's coming from multiple different angles. People believing, if you had to choose, here's what I'll say. Neither will be the starter. Both will be playing in several games early because why would you not use Brendan Lewis as a weapon if you can do that?
Yep.
You know, exactly what we're talking about with Oregon State. That was so frustrating. And they were doing it to everyone. In that short yardage situation, quarterback draw, quarterback power, whatever it is, and you're converting first downs. The other thing is, in this new weird college football world that we live in, a lot of places are not naming a true starter, at least for the first 4 weeks of the season, right?
Yep.
So I think what you're going to see is a mix of both early, which leads to JT eventually becoming the starter, but I think both are going to be on the field the entire season.
No, I think that's spot on. You've even seen Nick Saban in Alabama kind of do it too. He won't announce a starting quarterback, and then it's just kind of who trots out there when the offense goes on the field for the first time. So.
Yeah, and even if JT is a true starter, how do you not have a Brendan Lewis package?
Oh,
You do.
absolutely.
It just opens so many things up. And more than that, forces the defense to prepare for it. You know, if you do that the first 2 weeks of the season, well, guess what? Week 3, they are going to be spending time studying what to do against that. That's time they don't spend studying everything else. So I agree.
Also a good time for me to get my take in that every team should have a triple option package. They should just know how to run it.
Absolutely. I mean, going back to UNM here, why don't they run the triple option, man? You're so bad offensively. Why not?
My thing is just like, you should put it on film so then the other team has to spend hours every week preparing for it.
I remember up in Montana back in the day. I mean, they were playing Idaho back before Idaho was awful. And 1 week, Montana just tried out a triple option. It was a full-on triple option, and nobody saw it coming because they'd never done it before. And they beat the hell out of them because they didn't know how to understand.
If you don't prepare for that, college, like 18-year-old kids seeing that for the first time with no prep, they're going to get smoked.
Yeah.
All right, Henry, you want to tell us about some of our sponsors?
First of all, Breckenridge Brewery. I've had, this is a beer and a half, well, a seltzer and half a beer that I've had so far. It's really good stuff. I haven't been drinking a lot recently just because there's no tailgates, no football, anything.
Soon.
Yes. I know.
Soon. Calm before the storm.
I know. Where it's one of those things where, like, do I need to build a tolerance? Do I need to prepare my body? Do I say, like, nah, just hold off. It's going to hit really hard. It's kind of like the preseason football debate.
I think you're still kind of young enough that you're all right, Henry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll trust you. But yeah, the Honeydew Good Company Hard Seltzer is incredible. Honestly, not quite as good as the Avalanche Amber Ale. We love Breckenridge Brewery. Wait, which one's that?
I've got the black cherry. Yep.
Okay, whatever it is, can't go wrong. You can get them at any of our Broncos tailgates. You can also get them if you go to breckbrew.com, use the beer locator, put in whatever you want to try, and it'll just pop out, whatever's closest to you. Also, DraftKings Sportsbook.
Let's go.
We have been betting a lot, at least I have. Lost some money on Jokic. He was playing for the Serbian national team against Slovenia today in an international friendly.
If you're betting on this.
Yeah, well, you know who else I think was betting on it? Novak Djokovic, who was sitting courtside.
Oh, you think they have DraftKings in Serbia?
I don't think it was DraftKings. It was probably some sketchy.
All the homies are going to Serbia from DNVR Nuggets tomorrow morning, so we'll be able to ask questions like that and get answers.
There
We will. Assuming, they don't get arrested or anything. But yeah, probably. DraftKings, though, it's a lot of fun. I like to bet on preseason football. Ravens have won 21 in a row now. I think you can get them at like minus 200. That's a good bet. That's solid.
They've caught on.
But still, that's still solid.
I would say the best streak in sports history. Like, forget DiMaggio, 56 hit streak. Ravens, 21 straight preseason games, goated.
19 and 2 against the spread.
Unbelievable.
So there you go. If you don't want to play with the minus 200, there you go. But DraftKings Sportsbook, right now you can sign up. You'll get a $1,000 free bet if you...
Risk-free bet.
$1,000 risk-free bet. Up to $1,000 risk-free bet. If you miss your first bet, then you get whatever you bet back in the form of a free bet. So basically you get 2 tries at it. It's a really cool promotion. So make sure you sign up at DraftKings Sportsbook. Use the code DNVR. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Also, see the show notes for more details there.
There you go. All right. This part is going to be a ride. Because here in the second segment, I want to go with you guys who's in and who's out. This is the hardest part for me. And I think it's the most important part to cover. Like, if you're a Buffs fan who kind of checked out, if you're like me, I I couldn't handle like the negativity surrounding the mass exodus that happened with all the transfers. So I just like blocked it out. So I had to re-familiarize myself today with who's out. But there's also some exciting people who came in. So we've got a list here. I don't know exactly how you want to go through this. I can probably just start naming off all the people who left. And then we can kind of talk a little bit about who's replacing them. Then we'll talk about some of the new people coming in. So
Totally.
first and foremost, Brendan Rice is out. He goes to USC, where he is now wide receiver 5
At best.
There you go. That was
pretty good.
for you too. Which is, I feel bad for him because all these guys are getting lied to 24/7 when they're in the transfer portal. They're getting recruited. He obviously didn't imagine this.
Well, and the toughest part is, he commits there. Then after that, Mario Williams commits there, who was one of Caleb Williams' weapons at Oklahoma. And then after that, Jordan Addison commits there, who won the Biletnikoff last year.
Right.
So right there's 2 more spots down the depth chart after he committed.
And they already had players there, of
They
course.
sure did.
They didn't just start from zero.
They sure did.
So that's a tough break for him. Jarek Broussard goes to visit old friend Mel Tucker in East Lansing.
Michigan State, Nebraska, Colorado State, most hated to least hated for CU fans right now.
Ooh.
Oh, I'll say in the CU athletic department, Michigan State number 1.
Probably. Yep.
I'll say for me, what was the 4th option?
CSU? No, there were just 3.
Okay, there's only 3.
Yeah.
Nebraska number 1, Michigan State number 2, CSU number 3.
I love the Big Ten hate.
I just don't want Michigan State to be good. Like, that's all I care about.
Yeah.
They already were once. CSU, there's no reason to hate them right now because the Buffs have won 5 straight against them, and we don't play them.
Next year, though.
Yeah,
Right?
my hate.
Yeah, next
they'll move up to 2 or 1 next year,
Okay.
especially if Norvell shows anything this year. What I will say is, again, I was really dialed into the college football world today. Someone I talked to said Norvell knows what he's doing. He's a good coach. He has a bottom quarter G5 roster.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see what he can do with that. Either way, CSU's low on the list right now.
And as soon as he...
Jay Norvell was sitting right in one of these chairs like a week ago. Respect to him for that.
Respect to him for that. Also, as soon as he has a winning season,
He's gone.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. A couple just like graduations and or draft entries. Nate Landman, of course, a legend.
Yep.
He's out. Carson Wells gone.
yes.
Those
are the 2 biggest losses. And what I really
forget the
hate...
transfer portal.
Exactly. And that's where you read a preview from some outsider saying the Buffs were hit hard. They lost blah, 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 blah. Those are the 2 biggest losses. And so don't get caught up. The transfer portal, obviously things went horribly. That is very clear. But those 2 are the biggest losses. And those are very natural losses that don't get brought up because of what happened in the portal.
Well, it's a leadership aspect, right?
Yeah.
I think that looms large over that.
For sure. I would say the biggest loss is Christian Gonzalez.
From a talent perspective, absolutely.
Yes. I mean, this is a guy who was it? Was it PFF? Someone said
14th overall.
14th in a
man.
mock.
Yeah.
This is, a legitimate corner who can lock down most number ones, not Drake London. But,
Yep.
and a big reason, we talk about the Broncos building their defense around Pat Surtain. Well, I think especially early in the season, that's what Chris Wilson was trying to do. Was hey, we have Christian Gonzalez. We can play press man. And it kind of worked against Texas A&M.
Oh, yeah.
So that one to me is the one that hurts the most. Dimitri Stanley's out. That one just hurts because that's like a legacy who's from Colorado, who was kind of a fan favorite, but wide receivers grow on trees in 2022.
You've got Chase Penry right there.
Yep. Mekhi Blackman, another one that kind of stings. And what we said about Brendan Rice not playing at USC, sounds like Mekhi Blackman actually is going to be a big piece of their defense.
Yep. He's a little undersized for a cornerback. That's okay in college football. He's a good player. And that's why, last year you have Nigel Bethel, you have Mekhi Blackman, you have Christian Gonzalez. They were able to go man against Texas A&M, against basically everybody up until Nigel's injury, and win against anybody. So that's a big change.
I mean, USC was awful on defense anyway. especially in the secondary. They couldn't cover anyone.
Yeah, for sure, except CU. Let's go quickly. We talk about Gonzalez and Blackman. Henry, who replaces those two guys?
So honestly, there's a long list. Is the first part of the answer. You've got Nico Reed, Kalen Moore, who played quite a bit. I mentioned Nigel Bethel. He played, I think, 3 games before he got hurt, missed the rest of the season. He could bump up. He's a veteran. You've got a pretty solid freshman class from everything we've heard. But it probably starts with Nico Reed. He has special traits. Last year, I heard from a scout, an NFL scout, who's having a conversation, and one of the things he said was that, he's out there watching, Christian or Nate or whoever he's watching, but he's like, that 25, he really is good. And he's not wearing 25 this year, but Nico Reed has all of the traits except for the size. There's a reason he's the returner. He's the guy you look to be the number one guy out there.
And I mean, the hype around him is pretty real in Boulder. Like, people are essentially saying he's Chris Gonzalez without the length.
Yeah.
Without as much length.
Yeah.
And whether that's true or not, that's just like the feeling up there. Super fast, super twitchy. A lot of the things that you like to see.
Just a really good athlete more than anything.
Yep. Okay. Couple more exits. Actually, so you lose Mark Perry, not Quinn Perry, who actually goes to TCU. And interestingly enough, I heard today that they're looking for the offensive players, looking forward to getting a chance to play against him. And maybe game plan against some of his tendencies.
It's not a good thing on his side. Good thing on CU side.
Hopefully. So he's out, which, I mean, you hate to lose, like, specific skills. He's fast, right?
Very fast.
He brings team speed to your defense. He never necessarily put it all together, but that is one of those things where you're just like, you could count on him to be fast.
Yep, and I think he took a little bit too much of a beating from the fan. He started playing early. If he goes to Bama or whatever, well, then he's not on the field until his junior year. Well, that's this year. And so you have to kind of watch him through the growing pains, and I think those growing pains kind of stick with him, especially at a position where you have to think a lot. But, will he turn out to be a really good player now that he's a junior, senior? Potentially.
I think accepting growing pains is something that fans need to get in the mindset to do this year, because this is a very young roster.
Yeah.
But that, to me, I don't know. Again, the expectations thing is what it's all about, right? My expectations for the Buffs, be fun. Like, don't be embarrassing. It's like where I'm at. Now, obviously, when game day comes around and I've had a couple drinks, I'm going to want them to win really bad. But when it comes down to it, like, there's a lot of young players on this roster that you look to and you're like, man, I hope he makes some plays this year and looks good. And you hope that this young group that we're talking about that's going to play a lot and you're going to have to deal with the growing pains 2 years from now is the group, that we're talking about being legit. But, like, I was telling you before the podcast, like, I really like Trevor Woods. Well, that's who's filling in, at that position. He's going to make mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to have his problems, but he's also, like, an exciting young player. And he made some plays last year, and you look forward to, what he can be. But I do think it's tough to get on these guys when they play really young for making mistakes that you should be expecting from young players. Just to finish this off, Colby Purcell, I think, is the last one who you lose. And that's one piece of the offensive line. If you go through this, you're only losing one piece there.
Yeah, and that's the good news. I mean, the bad news is that the line wasn't
good
at all last year. And we'll talk about the coaching changes, but that potentially is the biggest change on the coaching staff is, moving on from Mitch Rodrigue, bringing in Kyle Devan. So you have that working for you. But, yeah, I mean, Noah Fenske, the transfer from Iowa, sat most of last year, but will probably be the center. Austin Johnson competing for that job, I think still. I haven't been up there in camp. But still a battle.
There's some hype around him.
Yeah, there is some hype there. And, tackle struggled last year. One was a freshman. One had shoulder surgery. You need your shoulder if you're going to play tackle. So there's reasons to think it should be better.
All right, we're deep into the segment already. We haven't even gotten to the who's in part. Quickly on coaches, who's out? Demetrius Martin, Darren Cheverini, Mitch Rodrigue. That at least two of those make you feel a lot better. Obviously, Chev, you hate to pile on him because he's a person who loves the program, was a great player back in his time, but the wheels really, really came off for him last year. There was a lot of strife within the coaching staff. There was a very big lack of cohesion between the coaches, and he was part of that. It's not all on him, but you feel like that's a place where you really needed a fresh start, and it's a bummer because he brought in a lot of these receivers who we'll talk about in a little while that are like, he did a good job recruiting that position, and some other players for sure, but it reached a breaking point for sure last year.
And
no one's keeping their job with that offense.
That is absolutely true. But that is another one of those that you look at and say, like, if you can just have like a below average kind of game planner, play caller, team builder in that spot, that could be a pretty significant upgrade.
And it was always awkward that he was like a candidate to be the coach, at least in the fans' eyes and in his eyes for sure. And then he had to like accept a demotion. Like, it was really, really weird. And it's one of those things that in hindsight, everyone was hoping like, well, hopefully they can keep Chev. Hopefully they can keep Chev. It's one of those things that's like, maybe they shouldn't have done that because now there's like this weird relationship between the head coach and the offensive coordinator. And it could have been predicted for sure. But he's gone. Rodrigue and his replacement, who I'm blanking on his name, who they used halfway through the season.
Halfway through. Vallejos. William Vallejos.
Yes, exactly. Who actually did a much better job.
Yeah, immediately.
Yes.
That Oregon game, they put up 29 points or whatever.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Yeah. He's out as well. And I guess we'll go backwards order here to just go directly into the coaches. Coming in is Mike Sanford, Phil McGagan, Kyle Devan, Clay Patterson, and was there one more? Oh, the corners coach. Who's his name?
Rod Chance.
Yes, yep. Rod Chance. So I mentioned all their names at first, and then we'll go kind of one by one. But I will say this. From people I talked to, they said these coaches that have been brought in is by far the best move that Carl Durrell has made since he got to Boulder. And you keep hearing things like what Henry said, where like the quarterbacks are saying, yeah, they're telling us where to go with the ball now. And it's like, what were they doing before? The tight ends are saying like, yeah, you used to just go hit people. Now I know like how to hit people, or like how to block. And it's just like, what exactly were they doing in practice before? Which is concerning in its own right. But what I guess what these guys specifically brought to the staff is like a level of professionalism and organization.
Yes,
that I think was really missing. And I always try to look at these things from a business owner standpoint because it's the closest thing I have to running a football team. Yep. And it's like lack of organization and lack of professionalism can spiral out of control really quickly. And good communication, good organization, like professionalism, like a certain way you carry yourself can actually go a really long way. So if I'm looking for reasons to be like, why would these same players be significantly better than they are last year, this would be it.
Absolutely. And I mean, that organization stuff, like, yeah, that's all true. It's especially true when you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're trying to teach them things to get things going. Like, this is now a staff that can do that sort of thing. And again, do they have the talent to do that this year? We'll see. But they at least have things kind of in good shape. And that alone is really exciting. But, I mean, we can say this because it's out there now. But during one of the games last year, the offensive lineman went up to our guy, Matt McChesney, who was on the sideline with like a field pass and said, how are we supposed to block this? Like, so when they come at us with this, and they kind of circled around him. And there's a whole thing that had to get broken up. But again, those are the kinds of questions they were going to Matt McChesney on the sideline for. Again, we don't want to pile on the former coaches, but this staff now, you would think Kyle Devan comes over. He was at Michigan last year. He was an analyst. That was the offensive line that won the Outland Trophy, which goes to the best offensive line in the country. He was on Peyton Manning's offensive line when Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl. He has been a Power 5 offensive line coach before. Like, there's all these things that you look at and just say, we know that the Buffs are in better hands there. Now, are they in good hands? I think there's a lot to like probably, but at the very least, better hands.
I'll say this. I've talked to a couple players. It's only 2 days on the beat. But I've talked to a couple offensive linemen, Casey Roddick, Noah Fensky. I'll have notes coming later this week. But both of them emphasize just the coaching and the technique. And
Did
just,
Noah Fensky say, no offense to the former coaches, but
he actually kind of did, yeah. He said no shots taken at people that were previously there. But anyways, yes, that's the whole energy, I think, around the program, especially these positions that really went through real struggles last year. The energy is just revitalized. It sounds like these players are actually coming into their own, feeling comfortable about their game, feeling comfortable about what they're being taught by coaches.
yeah, it's that for me. Of all, I talked to a lot of people today, and of all the things I heard, that is the best thing I heard, which is just like these guys, especially Sanford, Phil McGagan, and Devan are like a whole different caliber. Than the guys that they were going from. And there's always going to be these types of things said whenever new people come in. But it's usually like, oh, yeah, this guy's legit. This guy, when it's like, it's night and day difference, that's something to, I think, take note of.
Again, we're talking about, Darren Cheverini coaching the receivers. Where did he coach receivers beforehand? He's around Texas Tech doing that sort of thing. Phil McGagan now comes in. He's coached Chad Ochocinco, Keenan Allen, Anquan Bolden, Brandon Marshall, Greg Jennings, Sammy Watkins, Jabbar Gaffney, Brian Hartline, Devontae Parker. The receivers he's coached have earned over $1 billion in the NFL. Like his last job was with the Chargers. And so coming in to be the Buffs wide receivers coach, that's the sort of thing that you can pretty easily get excited about.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And you just hope to see a level of organization on the offense.
Yes.
That will go such a long way. I mean, again, it's basically impossible to be worse than they were last year. So anything is going to be better. But you do feel like, hey, just having like a play caller who comes in with a game plan that's clear and concise, and these guys can get behind, and they're going into each week with like knowing what wants to be done, knowing what they're going to call, knowing what they want to execute. That type of stuff, maybe you take for granted when you have it, but when you don't have it, you definitely see what happens.
And he said, Mike Sanford said this spring, they're going to be watching football all weekend. Like Saturdays they're watching football, Sundays they're watching football, and they're going to see what other offenses are doing, what the new innovations are throughout the sport at every level, and they're going to start taking those things and putting them into their offense. Yeah. Which is just like that. Be at the forefront. Doesn't that sound nice?
Nathaniel Hackett said recently that when he was interning, I forget where he was. I want to say maybe Syracuse. It might have been when he got to the NFL. I can't remember. But his job was just to watch other teams' plays and draw them up. He's like, yeah, I drew up 16,000 plays in 2 years. Like, it's insane, but it seems obvious, right? Look around college football, the NFL, high school football. Who cares? If something worked, write it down and see if it works for you.
Yes. I think that's something that Belichick has his assistants do. It's called game padding.
Yep.
And it's literally every player on the field, both sides describe exactly where they are, what their job is, and just having that kind of outside perspective at different positions. It just goes a long way in just learning the game, knowing what you're supposed to be doing, knowing what your opponent's going to do too. It's a huge part of it.
All right, let's jump into some of these players who are coming in. The one that people were most excited for is RJ Sneed. Is it public? I don't even know.
I think it is.
Okay. Regardless, he's hurt. That doesn't. It sounds like it's actually pretty promising. I heard today that it's even more promising than maybe some people are saying, who have been talking about this. But he is legit when it comes to wide receiver. Like if you were just it doesn't work like this. But if you were trading Brendan Rice for RJ Sneed straight up, you'd win that trade, in my opinion.
This year, yes.
Yeah,
I totally agree. Yep. This year, 1-for-1, who would be more productive? RJ Sneed more than Brendan Rice. Now, 3 years from now, when Brendan Rice puts it all together, probably not.
Yeah, you're talking about a sixth-year COVID senior who comes over from Baylor.
All Big 12.
All Big 12, like crazy production. Just everything you want. Great route runner, great hands,
Exactly.
just one thing after another. Whereas Brendan Rice was just like a ball of clay, just pure athleticism. Someone you love. You wish you could have both.
You sure do.
But if Snead's healthy, which it sounds like he will be for the season, a guy who's really exciting. This was a great land from them.
I think the key thing you said, though, was consistent production. I mean, I think that's what this offense needs is someone to rely on at nearly all positions, just someone that's been there and done that. Snead offers that to this offense. Hopefully he gets back on the field soon. Maybe we'll see for the TCU game. They're going to need him.
Yep, for sure. And from what I heard, there's optimism.
Yep.
There's actually, there's optimism. Next one. Help me out here, Henry. It's the linebacker from West Virginia, Josh Chandler Semedo.
Yeah, I think, and going back and watching, it's mostly said Semedo. I'm not sure. We're going to figure it out soon, though. Josh Chandler Semedo. I mean, inside linebacker, his job is basically to replace Nate Landman. It's a tough job. At the same time, he started, I can't remember if it's 31 or 33 games at West Virginia. You'll love to see that. You know, he's a little bit undersized. Not the biggest guy, but he's a good tackler. Not a great tackler, but a good tackler. Solid against the run game. Knows where he's going, but he's also very good in coverage. Like, he's just so mobile, so shifty. I think the most exciting thing on 3 Sports, it's like one of the new recruiting websites. Maybe not. If we're talking about like which outlets do I trust their rankings of, I give him like a B. Yeah, B's probably good. But they say Josh Chandler Semedo, 5th best linebacker in the country.
Wow.
That's exciting.
That's a great replacement for Nate Landman.
I told you this. If he's the 50th best linebacker in the country, I'll be very happy.
Totally. There's a lot of linebackers.
Right, exactly. Even if you were just to say 2 per team, that's top 10% ish. Maybe a little less than that. Yeah. But either way, I mean, this is a guy who could come in and have a massive impact. A lot of times in college, I think defenses go as their linebackers go. And if he can just be solid, obviously you have Quinn Perry in there too, who had his moments, I would say.
Yep.
And will obviously be a year older, a year more experienced. But I guess you just think of it this way. In the first game, you're going up against the air raid, right? In TCU. Or some version of that. In the second game, you're going up against the triple option. Both of those things are demanding a lot out of your linebackers. Very different things, but you have to be solid at that position because both of those styles will carve you up if your linebackers are out of position and not playing well.
And as you mentioned, it's a very young team. So this is another veteran coming in at a position of need and honestly, a leadership position. You always want your middle linebacker to kind of be the captain of the defense. If he can be that for the Buffs this year, that's a huge get for them.
Yep. A lot of optimism around him. Just going through another transfer in here, Tommy Brown, offensive lineman from Alabama. What can you tell us, Henry?
Love to hear that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he didn't play all that much at Alabama. I think he got in for a few games during the COVID year. There were a couple linemen out with COVID. Then late in the game, they throw more guys in, keep everybody healthy, whatever. But
the fact that he put on an Alabama uniform and played on the field.
And there you go. And that seems to be the current staff is very excited about him. The whole team is really excited about him. They're not too worried. He had like a little cleanup thing on his knee, which I assume is out there. If not, I figured out in the way I can say it.
He hasn't. It's known that he hasn't been playing recently.
Yeah. Well, he's going to be out there probably for week 1. I'm not worried about that. Again, just has experience at right tackle, has experience at guard, has moved around, and they really think that he's going to be a really good player.
Also, 6'7", 320. I mean, this is a massive guy.
That's how you go to Alabama.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can't say no to that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, now I think, a couple of freshmen who have been garnering some hype, and one way above the others. And that is freshman wide receiver Jordan Tyson, who this is one of those ones where if the hype is real and it turns out it will look like such an obvious thing looking back because he comes out of Allen High School in Texas, which is
Kyler Murray's high school.
Yes, exactly. A Texas football powerhouse. And he is a beast wide receiver at a Texas football powerhouse and somehow does not get any love in the rankings. I think he was considered like 150th best wide receiver in the country. Buffs get him. And basically what everyone is saying is like, this dude's athleticism is insane. I know the social media accounts have posted out like a couple highlights of him making great catches in practice. Didn't exactly live up to the hype at the scrimmage that they had last weekend. But this is, I mean, you know, if they're talking about freshmen, this dude's getting talked about 10 times before anyone else gets talked about once. And it goes to what I was saying earlier about how, like, you're almost never at the college level going to have to worry about wide receiver depth. Like, you lose Brendan Rice, that's a bummer. You go get RJ Sneed, a all-conference performer from the transfer portal, and then you go and you find a diamond-in-the-rough receiver in Jordan Tyson, who maybe he contributes a bunch this year. He's definitely undersized for college football right now as a true freshman. But you also, I mean, you just look down that list, and it's like Chase Penry, and it's, you know, Ty Robinson, and it's Montana Lamonius Craig. Like, all these guys who are like, oh, yeah, that guy's solid, you know, at the very least. So this one's exciting for me because usually wide receivers are a position that practice translates pretty well to the field. If people are saying this guy's blowing up in practice, it usually happens on Saturdays as well.
It's a 7-on-7 world we live in, man. All these camps and everything, all these receivers and quarterbacks coming out, you kind of have to be polished at this point.
Yep. For sure.
And more important than the talent at that position, because everybody's going to have talent, the coaching. And that's what makes it so easy to get excited.
I wonder if there's and maybe this is easier said than done, but let's say Jordan Tyson is the next, and it does feel like whenever the Buffs, even when they're bad, they have like this wide receiver who's awesome. You know, going back to Paul Richardson, Nelson Spruce, like could be any of these guys. But if this does work out, maybe there's a formula that you could follow, which is like going to these big Texas high school powerhouses that are essentially being run like college football programs and taking, you know, getting some of the 3 stars that are coming out of those programs and saying like, hey, you know, come play for us. We value you as high as, you know, Alabama values your quarterback.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's absolutely something there. And just so much depth. Like, it's hard not to. Even Maurice Bell, Jalen Jackson coming back. Like, 2 seniors. In a perfect world, you don't need them. In a perfect world, you have all these young guys who are ready to pop off. But the baseline is so high because of all these vets, and they just have so much young talent, too. They're going to be just fine at receiver.
Again, experience at a key position that needs experience.
Yep. One here that I think just leads to an interesting note that I heard today. Victor Venn, who is a freshman running back, apparently is just him and Darren Hagen are like 2 peas in a pod. I was told they're basically clones, which is kind of funny. But it was told to me like this freshman class, the energy from them and the personalities is the best in years. And again, you know, you look at like there's going to be fans who are rolling their eyes at that, saying like, yeah, well, can they play? But there is something to be said about just energy. And it sounds like these kids came in, ton of energy, like very respectful. Again, does that translate to wins? I don't know. But it is nice to hear that like there's just a bunch of really good kids that came in from this recruiting class, Victor Venn being one of them. Just a lot of personality and you know, a lot of energy.
And this is the first recruiting class for Carl Durrell, or what I count as it. Because before, you know, you're recruiting over Zoom. Most of that, his first class obviously
getting in
put together by Mel Tucker.
Right.
Then the Zoom year, and then this is the first one where you have a full year where you're in living rooms doing that sort of stuff. I think that's how they see it too.
For sure. In the comments, someone talking about my strategy to go into those big high schools are saying Baylor and TCU and Texas Tech already do that. Sure.
Yeah.
If you could be as good as Baylor, TCU, and Texas Tech for the next 10 years, you'll be really happy.
Yep.
Baylor's a little different than the others, but sure.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, it's just like those programs, if that's what they're doing, it's working. And at least on a relevancy standpoint.
Plenty of receivers down there.
Yes, plenty of receivers.
Plenty of receivers.
Last one, maybe the most exciting and interesting here, Owen McCown. Henry, what have you heard about Owen McCown?
Only good things have been said about Owen McCown. Well, there is the big elephant in the room. He's like 5'11",
Small elephant in the room.
165 pounds. I wonder what he's actually listed at. I'm going to check that. But, yeah, I mean, just the moxie. It's a quarterback word. But lefty, we even asked Brady Russell about it yesterday. And he was like, oh, yeah, Owen McCown. Actually, we have great chemistry already. That sort of stuff. He's not going to be a factor this year. He's a true freshman. Josh McCown's son, in case anybody's interested. But someday, I think he's going to be really good. They have him listed 6'2", 175.
There's no chance.
Yep, you don't believe that.
I saw 6'1.5", so we'll see. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking like 5'11".
Keep an eye on when he walks out of practice.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I want your first person take.
But I don't know. There's always one of these waiting for us. As CU fans, it's like maybe it's him because we haven't had a quarterback drafted since Coy Detmer.
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe he's not going to get drafted, but it's you sit back and you just say like, who's going to be the one to save us? Owen McCown, I love hearing everything I've heard about him, which is just like he walked in, did not have deer in the headlights emotions or anything like that. It was just like, yeah, toss me a ball, let's play. Like, just a quarterback through and through. And that doesn't surprise you at all when his dad is Josh McCown. But
18 years in the NFL. Wild.
Absolutely wild.
20 teams, too.
Like, if you're Owen McCown, that means he spent his whole childhood around NFL players.
This is something I talked about a lot on the draft pod just throughout the years, especially just going over prospects and draft classes. But the pedigree of players that have parents or have grown up under people that played in the NFL or coached in the NFL, that stuff translates, man. Like, that matters. I know that a lot of people are going to see that and go, oh, hype, it's a former NFL kid. That stuff really does matter, though.
Of course. Yeah, you'd love for him to have inherited his dad's size. Maybe he sprouts.
That's the rumor.
Okay.
The growth plates. Yeah.
I love that. I can get behind any sort of thing like that. But it's so true. I mean, look at Pat Surtain. The dude, his dad's an NFL player, and he just walks into the NFL, and it's like it's nothing crazy to him, And I think that's what you're getting with Owen McCown, is just a guy who's like, yeah, like I'm not surprised by the workload or anything like that. And I'm not intimidated by the lights or, it's just he has the ultimate mentor on his side for how to be ready for this stuff. The one thing I don't like is just hearing like, oh, he's not going to be a factor this year. Like, why not?
Sure. I mean, Brendan Lewis became the starting quarterback last year. I mean, although that was due to injury.
Shirt. Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I don't want that to happen, but it's the one thing that I just wish I was hearing like, dude, this kid could just come in and win the whole thing. Now, I guess he's being hoisted up as fighting for the third spot, which for a true freshman who's coming in, you like to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, if he wins the third spot, you can get very excied about that.
Maybe you see him later on in the game with hopefully CU blowing someone out.
Let's go. Just blow out TCU. Play Owen McCown. All right, Henry, any other sponsors we need to shout out?
Yes, there are Athletic Greens.
We love Athletic
Greens.
Yes.
We sure do. Athletic Greens is it's a great thing. It's basically like this powder. You scoop the powder, you put the scoop into your water, you shake it all up, you drink it, and then all of a sudden all your problems go away. You're like, it'll give you energy. It's good for your gut health. It's
we call Athletic Golds on this show.
Wow, Athletic Golds. We're going back.
New product line.
I was watching Cat Grizz highlights. Cats are going up to Missoula. They wanted to wear their gold uniforms, color on color. Grizz coach wouldn't let him.
Love that.
Told reporters gold is for champions.
Ooh, love that.
It's so good.
Never say yes to anything your opponent is asking for.
Ever. Mm-hmm. Ever. But yeah, Athletic Golds, they have 75 vitamins. There's minerals in them, all sorts of good stuff. And if you sign up using the code DNVR, actually go to athleticgreens.com/buffs. Let's get that going. You get 5 free travel packs. You get a year's supply of immune-supporting vitamin D. It's all good stuff. And also go over to FOCO. There's all sorts of good stuff over there. They have Buffs memorabilia. They've got Avs bobbleheads. They've got Broncos bobbleheads. It's like championship-themed stuff. But also, got like a CU Hawaiian shirt, if that's the kind of thing that you feel like you're lacking. A whole bunch of other options.
Definitely feel like I'm lacking that.
Well, head on over. You can get 10% off if you use the code DNVR at foco.com. Just got to use the code DNVR. And you could also just click the link in the YouTube description below.
You probably can't get this Cody Hawkins Russian nesting doll, but you could get something close to it.
Where can you get that?
In Russia. My sister got it for me from Russia while she was studying abroad.
Wow, the CU footprint goes that far, huh?
Yes, it does. And they even knew who the players were, which is kind of
amazing.
All right, final segment here. Marissa, if you could go through and just star some good comments or questions that people left, we'll get to those at the very end. But I want to go here because I'm feeling optimistic today. Maybe it's just because it's a good day. It's like a Wednesday, hump day. Made it to the second half of the week. But I'm feeling optimistic about the Buffs today. So I want to go through and just say, like, how could a fan be optimistic right now? What is the path to a bowl game? What does it look like for CU to take a step in the right direction this year?
Well, the offense can't get any worse, honestly. The offense only has room to go up. And we mentioned the youth on this team, the influx of young talent. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of these guys playing early and often. But also, I think you're going to see a lot of these sixth-year guys. We didn't talk about Brady Russell today, but that's a key player in this offense as they kind of transition between coordinators and coaches on other positions.
And we can talk about Brady Russell. Like, I kind of wanted to get into some of the players that maybe we haven't mentioned that are, we talked about newcomers, we talked a little bit about freshmen, but there are guys like Brady Russell who it's just like, when utilized, Brady Russell has been a productive player in his career, and he feels like he could be a legitimate weapon on the offense. Like, he has several plays a season where you're like, they should use him more. Mm-hmm. And maybe, Sanford coming in from a system that used a lot of tight end last year gets Brady Russell involved, and he can be like a difference maker for the Buffs. Totally.
Absolutely. To me, the biggest reason to get excited is because I don't know that the schedule is as tough as it looks. You start the year against TCU. TCU won 5 games last year. One was against Duquesne. One was against Kansas. You throw both those out. They played a 34-32 game with Cal. Cal's the kind of team that's sort of the barometer for CU. Like, can you beat Cal could be the question that decides whether you go to a bowl game or not. And so you open the year against TCU, and if you beat TCU, all of a sudden, this negativity that's been around the program it's been brewing for a while, obviously. 2 decades you could go back. But in the last 9 months or so in particular, since the transfer portal stuff hhappened, if you go out there and start 1-0, all of a sudden everything's on the table, and that's right there. Then you go Air Force. Minnesota, that's a tough team to beat. But it was a 13-0 game after a couple mistakes from Colorado deep in the third quarter last year. You just need a competent offense, and all of a sudden that could have gone differently. Now, they lost 30-0, so saying, yeah, they're going to beat Minnesota. That's bold. But you do see how this path is there, and then it lightens up maybe even from there in October.
Yeah, and that for me is the big thing. I've been joking, but I'm kind of serious. Like, I've been calling it undefeated October. That should be the goal. That should be the goal, because you look at October,
absolutely,
and you have 4 games in October. Mm-hmm. At Arizona versus Cal, at Oregon State versus Arizona State. Arizona is terrible.
Yep.
Cal is very just painfully mediocre.
Disarray.
Yes.
A lot of disarray.
Oregon State is the one that it's like, they're actually well coached and might have something going there. But
took it to them last year, though.
They're still Oregon State, and you beat them last year when amidst everything that we've been talking about. And then Arizona State is
in shambles.
Just it feels like a house of cards to me. Just like they're just one breeze away from the whole thing falling down. And so Arizona State's maybe the one I worry about the most, just because we don't have a history of beating them. But you could legitimately get 3 wins in that month. And if you pull off TCU, you never know with Air Force. You at least can come out of that stretch feeling like this program took a step in the right direction this year.
The tough part is that November is Oregon, USC, Washington, Utah.
Yep.
So that doesn't inspire much confidence. But the good news is you don't have to play any of them till the end of the year. And hopefully, say things go well and you're sitting there at what? That would be 4-4 heading into that stretch. Hey, you win one, you call it 5-7. That's been where the Buffs have been living. All of a sudden, that feels like a pretty good step forward. And next year, you can realistically say, yeah, bowl game or bust.
Plus 3 ranked teams at the end there. You get one of these big upsets. That's a potentially
So
program-changing win.
Yeah, and it's tough to like get there as a Buffs fan right now because everyone is so down in the dumps. But like CU has a history of pulling off those types of upsets. Like once in a while, maybe once every couple of years, they get one that's special. You rush the field, all that stuff. To me, any path towards anything this year, unfortunately, starts with the first game of the season. And in a bad sense, that's the most random game of the season. Also, maybe for the Buffs, in a good sense, that's the most random game of the season. You're getting a very average, at best, team from last year. Probably you would say a bad team from last year. At home, Friday night, under the lights, season opener. You're still undefeated, so fans, are excited. The students are going to be insane for that night. And if you win that, I think anything's possible. Then you go to Air Force. It's a bummer that you're getting Air Force in maybe like a season that they're expecting to be one of their best seasons. But I will say like that regardless, no matter what, you're going to be more talented than them. So that, that's always their motto is like, it doesn't matter if you're more talented than us, we're going to out-scheme you. And it's always difficult. We saw, Mel Tucker's team lose to them just a couple years ago. But you can beat them. Like, this is a Mountain West team that is a service academy that cannot recruit good players at all. Now, they have some guys. But top to bottom, their roster is severely undermanned compared to a Pac-12 roster, even if we're talking about the Buffs. That being said, I fully expect Air Force to be favored by 8 to 10 points.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
So it's going to be tough, but if you were able to get one of those two, then, you go into October. You also, you do have UCLA. Who knows with them? Right. You've always played them tight. But I think there's maybe 6-7 winnable games on the schedule. It shouldn't be an expectation. But for me, it's like, can you just be relevant? Can you be competitive? And can you be interesting? If they can do those things, I'll be a happy fan this year.
Yeah, I think that's realistic. I said 5-7. I think you're happy. 6-6. You're thrilled, which is not the place you want your football program to be. Thrilled with a bowl game is no fun at all. But I'm being realistic. 5-7, that's good. And I think if I had to pick, I'd say 4-8's probably most likely.
Yeah.
5 maybe more likely than 3. But you've got so much talent at so many different positions. Just figuring out who you put out there. I mean, you look at the edge rushers. Terrence Lang, Guy Thomas, 2 good players. But then there's 6 guys after that where you say Alvin Williams. You've got Devin Grant. You've got so many players out there that could pop off. Just give me a couple exciting storylines. Give me the thrill of potentially going to a bowl game, because that's the other thing. The way a schedule sets up, there's a good chance you have 4 games at the end of the season that could have bowl eligibility on the line. Winning one of them is going to be tough, but I think that there's a real path for this to at least be a fun season.
And look, we've talked a lot about the players, but honestly, I think the greatest improvement on this football team is the coaching staff.
Yes.
Getting a lot of coaches that can come in and have been there, done that at a lot of different programs, NFL caliber coaching. There's no telling what that can mean to a program.
Yeah, and I mean, look at that the defensive front is something you can get excited over. And Terrence Lang, Jalen Sami, Naeem Rodman. We didn't talk about those guys, but that is a legitimate Pac-12 front.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I mean, Jalen Sami, Naeem Rodman on the inside, saying that's going to be the best duo, that's bold, because there's going to be whoever Oregon runs out there that you never heard of before but USC, pans out.
Yeah.
Right.
But being top 4, that's a very realistic expectation. Terrence Lang, 5.5 sacks in 2019. Only 1 sack since. Can he figure it out, put all pieces together? Because he has all the tools.
Yeah.
Guy Thomas was a monster last year, and then he got hurt. He had his big breakout, so who knows what he is. And then you've got all the other guys behind him. I mean, it's easy to see.
And can't forget Cole Becker.
The Iceman. The Iceman.
A kicker so good, he's got an NIL deal.
Did he? I missed that.
He has an NIL deal with Colorado National Golf Course
That's a good one.
for free golf.
That's
Oh,
a good one.
You can't beat that.
I don't even have a deal for free golf.
Wow. I wonder if we can get him to bring us out there. Golf video.
We should absolutely do that.
We need to figure that out.
Yeah, hit us up. Again, I think a couple more, I guess. Isaiah Lewis is like another player that you feel confident in. At least I do.
Yep. Legit Pac-12 player.
Yep. And that's why, when you go through this group and you can get so negative, and then you're thinking, oh God, we got to play Air Force. It's like, you have you have legitimate players on the defense that can make plays for you in that game.
Yep.
And you should be able to go to march on them on offense.
You would think.
You would think.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. By the way, speaking of that Air Force game, we are sending 2 buses down to the Air Force game. Super excited for this. In fact, I shouldn't even say we're sending 2 because 1.5 are already sold out. So
wow.
For $80, you get your ticket to the game, which is, to me, the best part. You don't have to deal with going through Air Force or anything like that. We'll hook you up with your ticket to the game. You get a ride from the DNVR bar. We're going to open early so you can come in, have some breakfast, have a drink. Ride from here all the way down to Air Force. We'll drop off for the game. And then after the game, 30 minutes after you hop back on the bus, we'll bring you back to Denver, back to the DNVR bar. It's one of those things where it's like you are probably thinking should we go down to that Air Force game? But you don't want to deal with the logistics and all that stuff. Boom. One click of a button. You pay your $80, which is, I feel like, a great deal for a round trip plus a ticket, and you're in. So,
And you can bring drinks on the bus.
Yeah, go to dnvrlocker.com, and you can find the Buffs Air Force Party Bus tickets there. I think that wraps it up for us before we get to our questions. All right, you're going to have to turn your mic on and read them to us, Marissa, because we don't have a monitor.
All right. It says, the offense is going to be intriguing. New OC and seeing who wins the quarterback battle between Shrout and Lewis. I think Shrout wins, though.
Yeah.
There you go. There's
Totally.
4 votes for Shrout.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. It goes, hello from St. Louis. Used to love the Buffs from Lakewood, Colorado.
Get back on the train.
Yes.
And if the Buffs can magically get into a bowl game, I might cry tears of joy.
I've cried tears of joy for less.
Yep.
Buffs, bring it out of me.
Yep.
Is Snead projected to be in the slot?
That's an interesting one. I don't think we know for sure, but that is an option. He's played in the slot before. The thing about Snead that's so exciting is that he can do anything.
I was going to say, he's going to project to play everywhere.
He can get open in the slot. He can make crazy catches downfield. There's some real highlights, like OBJ type catches. The catch and run highlights are out there too. He can do anything, and he can patch whatever hole you need.
When you guys mentioned the guys that were already on the roster last year, Montana, Lamonius Craig, Daniel Arias, these aren't like solidified guys in certain positions. I think there's a lot of malleability in the receiver core.
Yeah, in Arias, I mean, you're just waiting for a breakout.
We had a revelation today.
At some point, it's got.
This is
you
big
wanna
news.
tell this?
Yeah, so back in 2019 when KD Nixon was here, he had the famous quote that Daniel Arias is DK Metcalf Jr. Did some research today. Daniel Arias recently turned 24, or maybe he's about to. He's 24-ish. He will be by the start of the season. DK Metcalf Jr. He's 24.
He'll
be 25 in a couple months.
DK Metcalf himself also the same age.
Also the same age.
Which is crazy because is DK going into his 4th season in the NFL?
He already got the extension.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That is wild.
Big revelation.
All right. Coach Durrell is entering his 3rd year as a head coach. What are you guys looking for this season in order to believe he's the right man for the job?
So here, the thing about Carl is that his strength is the staff building. You know, he's got all the connections. He knows good coaches. He's been everywhere, all that sort of stuff. He was kind of, I don't know if they officially pitched it, but the original excitement, and although there were the things that you weren't excited about, the excitement was he should be able to build a really, really good coaching staff. And in theory, what that looks like is you bring in Mike Sanford. Well, guess what? 2 years from now, Mike Sanford moves on. He's a head coach somewhere. And so, you know, is Phil McGagan ready to fill in? I mean, he's probably above offensive coordinator status at that point, but that'd be the idea, is you get to move him up there, you know, and you just kind of build this farm. You get to pull in from outside, and he's kind of been hamstrung for a couple of reasons. first of all, being hired really late, and so you're not getting, your pick of everybody. You're kind of... Mitch Rodrigue was the last offensive line coach hired in that cycle. It's something you throw out there. Now, he still got hired. It's whatever, but that's the sort of thing. Now you kind of cycle through, figure out who you like. You bring in these guys. So that is the reason to be excited. What's a good season? I say 3 wins, he keeps his job.
Yeah.
6 wins, 5 wins, we said, is probably a good season. The standard next year is a bowl game, though.
Sure.
Yeah, you got to do something eventually. I think unfortunately for Coach Terrell, this is a buy time year.
Yep.
Show that the program is moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a chance that doesn't necessarily play itself out in the win column. You'd love for that to happen.
Sure would.
But I'll be honest, like for me, just coming from the fan perspective, he has a lot of work to do before I feel like he's the right guy for the job. So this would have to be like a surprisingly good season for me to come away from this season saying he's the guy for the job. Just knowing the way the athletic department runs, the standards have to be lower for will he be the coach next year. But he's got a long way to go to win me over.
I think it goes back to the offense and something that you said earlier, Ryan. I mean, if you're losing games 45-40, that's progression in the offense. I think that's something you can really rally and build behind. So
yeah, I mean, I would take 30-25.
Also, just plug in a fun thing. Our guy John Snelson, he's been working. I know he's been working for a very long time, working very hard. He made like a 15-20 minute Carl Durrell documentary type thing that dropped yesterday. I haven't had a chance to watch it.
I haven't either.
I guess it's really good.
It's on the main Colorado football Twitter page.
Yeah, if John Snelson made it, it's good. So
He's
just
the best.
Straight up. All right, what else, Marissa?
All right, we got 2 left. Did Elway's kid ever do anything?
What a random question, but no.
No, he did not.
Okay.
He was Brock Osweiler's roommate.
Yes, and
Interesting.
so he
Does that count?
got the Broncos to draft Brock Osweiler over Russell Wilson.
Something.
Got him a Super Bowl.
Great spin.
And last one, and I'm gonna butcher this name.
The enemy.
Okay, Bieniemy.
Good call.
Why has Bieniemy never gotten a head job?
Whew.
Weird.
There's a can of worms.
Couple weird back-to-back questions. I mean, I think it honestly goes back to his time as an offensive coordinator at CU, and it was just a mess. And I think he developed a reputation then for being a little bit of a hothead.
He's not a player's coach.
And that's kind of where I was getting here is like, I don't know. I mean, players' coaches are definitely in hot demand these days. Like, look at Nathaniel Hackett. Look at how it didn't work when the Broncos didn't hire a players' coach in Vic Fangio. People are still complaining about things that were happening then. It's a little bit about that. I mean, anyone who follows CU knows that there was legal stuff at CU in Eric Bieniemy's past. I personally am a big fan of Eric Bieniemy. Like, I've spent time with him at the Combine. I've talked to him. He is a hilarious person to be around. But I just think there's certain things about him that don't bode well in his favor of convincing GMs that he should be their head coach.
For one example, we'll drop one. This is obviously out there, but from his time when I think he was just the running backs coach at CU, they bring in Marcus Houston, one of the best recruits ever.
This is
well reported. He actually told reporters, he called him Marquisha to them, and then Marcus ends up transferring to CSU. And also, but there's those sorts of things that I'm not sure that he's, again, not necessarily a player's coach.
If I could put my NFL cap on real quick, too.
Yes.
I think the market's kind of cooled on Andy Reid disciples. I mean, you saw Matt Nagy really kind of flame out in Chicago. Doug Peterson got fired in Philadelphia. So I think that kind of just cooled down, and I think everyone's took a step back and decided, is he really head coach material?
Not a play caller.
And I mean, the truth is, like, a lot of guys who have maybe done less than him are getting opportunities. And so you could make the case that, hey, why isn't he getting it? He should. And I think, I think he should get an opportunity. Or at least I hope he gets an opportunity. But at the same time, the other thing is, like, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes together, people aren't thinking, like, they're not putting Eric Bieniemy in that conversation when they're talking about why are the Chiefs so good. They're like, well, yeah, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. They're not saying Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Eric Bieniemy.
No, they're saying Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Tyreek Hill.
And maybe,
Travis Kelce.
maybe they should, but it's just the truth is it's not happening. So there's a layered answer for you that maybe didn't even hit all the layers. All right, well, just to keep us kind of on track here, I want to just finish with Jake, I'm going to give you more time before you have to make your prediction. But Henry, give me a win prediction.
I'll go 4.
All right.
I'll go 4.
I'll
I mean, the sports books would say that's optimistic, and that's really sad. But I mean, yeah, I'll say 4. I think that, I mean, again, you look through the schedule. If you don't beat Arizona, that's when things fall. That's where you say, like, okay, maybe it is time to make a real change. You got to beat Arizona. You look through the rest of the schedule. TCU's winnable. Air Force is always winnable, even though they're in a weird place right now for a lot of different reasons. Definitely. UCLA isn't that good, although they have the pieces, whatever. But you can run through the whole schedule. Arizona State, obviously, that's another one where it's like, that's a 50. I say 4 wins. Is 5 or 3 more likely? I think I lean 5, but maybe I'm just buying the hype because it's been a fun couple days.
One more point on, and everyone should have the triple option. If you're playing against it, you already have to teach the scout team how to run it.
True.
Just bring them
teach
in.
the offense how to run it. Just put one package in there, then the defense has to stop it every day, and you're not wasting your time.
It is, though, like the cut blocking. And like all that sort of stuff that goes along with it too. Like you have the big receivers who are run blockers out there.
I don't know. I talked to a football coach who said hardest to defend, easiest to install.
You know,
yeah, makes sense.
Also talking Bobby Houck up in Montana, another triple option Montana story. You know, one time we were talking to him about it, and he said, it's the greatest offense that's ever been created. So I asked, why don't you run it? And he said, there's only a handful of people who know how to run it right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyways, I'm going 5. I'll be the
okay.
I'll go on. I have a hard time painting my way to 6.
Yep.
Even if I'm being optimistic. But undefeated October +1. There's 5.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, I think that's going to wrap it up. Jake, super stoked to have you on the squad. Thanks to everyone who chimed in the comments, tuned in tonight. Keep an eye out. We're going to have a lot more like this, especially these Wednesday night podcasts. I think that's going to be a goal to be doing throughout the season, so that'll be fun. Come down to the DNVR bar. We are now the official watch party location for the Denver Forever Buffs, so you can count on there being game sound on for every game. Especially the away games are when we're going to be doing the big watch party. So if you're not going on the road, come hang out with us here. But for now, that is going to wrap it up for us on DNVR Buffs Live. We'll talk to you guys soon.